Fantasy Rap
with Austin and Ozzy.
Oh, I just love those boys.
Hey everyone, this is Fantasy Rap, and I'm your host Ozzy.
And I'm your co-host Austin.
You can find us on fantasyrap.com. That is fantasywrap.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the follow-up to week 3 of the fantasy season. And we're going to start with how we did. How'd we did?
We did. I went 2-1 this week. Actually, no, sorry, 1-2. My bad. A little dyslexia there. Came down to last night in the Yahoo redraft league against Nick. I was up by like 12 points, and then the game started, and 5 minutes later I was down by 12 points because he had Josh Allen and James Cook.
That'll do it.
Yeah, I got what I needed out of
Jaden Daniels.
Did not get what I needed out of T. Higgins. So I felt came up about 8 points short. So, but yeah,
Closer than it probably should have been.
At one point I was down on Sunday during the games. I was down like 30, 40 points, and then I had Kyron and Jameer, and so I came back. But yeah, so and then I think in our dynasty league I lost. Opponent had Joe Burrow last night, who had a good fantasy game, and then in my other dynasty I won. It was like 135 or 140 to like 96. So yeah,
Good game.
Had a rough week.
Good close game.
Yeah.
I went 3-0. This is becoming a broken record. Not that I don't mind. I enjoy going 3-0. In the dynasty league that we're in, I was the high scorer this week. Mm-hmm. Without McCaffrey, without AJ Brown. Chuba put up some monster numbers.
Yeah, he did.
Which was it was a surprise, and yet it wasn't a surprise. It just shows what a team can do with a quarterback. Mm-hmm. My 32-year league, I won actually going away. Luckily, he had Jacobs and Tennessee running back Pollard.
Yep, I did too.
And I don't think he got 10 points out of the two of them together. And I misplayed in 2 of my leagues. I set Malik Neighbors. I think I've learned not to sit Malik Neighbors.
Yep.
I mean, they were going against Cleveland.
Yeah, that was something going on in Cleveland still. But yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones actually looked okay.
Yeah.
He looked a lot better than he had weeks. Oh, excuse me. Obviously, week 1, and then last week as well. But yeah, that one was a weird one. That
I picked. That was my survivor pick. Cleveland.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we're out of that. Who would have thunk?
Nobody.
You know, it's like a lot of people picked the Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
They lost that one. You know, there were who would have thought that Tampa Bay was going to get slaughtered?
It's probably a lot of people picked the Niners.
Yeah. I mean, it was up and down a weird week.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving on, we have our injuries. We're going to start with Justin Herbert. That same ankle.
Yep.
Retweaked it. He's day to day. I believe they said it was a low ankle sprain, so it's not something that they're overly concerned about.
Yeah, he'll probably push to play because they're playing Kansas City this week, so a divisional game for them. And so I picked up Kansas City's defense. So I wouldn't mind if Herbert sat, but he hasn't really been lighting up the world regardless. So I think I'll be sitting pretty good with Kansas City's defense this week.
Next up, we've got Sam Darnold. Knee injury. He's day-to-day also. He apparently escaped a serious injury.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting to see how he does this weekend.
Yeah.
Against the Green Bay defense that threw up 8 sacks and and
Pick 6.
yeah,
Yeah. That's,
3 picks.
Oh, yeah, I think it was, that sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, they lead the league with 7 interceptions, and they've got 2 pick sixes, and they've got, I mean, a ton of sacks. So their defense is looking good. They stopped Pollard.
It's not hard when Will Levis can't.
I get that, but Pollard has had a couple.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't been horrible, but
No,
he was
He's had a
horrible.
lot of volume, and he did not have much volume because that game got out of hand pretty quick. So
Yeah.
they were trying to throw it and trying to catch up. So
Yep. Next up, we've got Devonta Smith, concussion protocol.
yeah, that's one where I agree with you, what you've been saying for the last couple of seasons. Where if you, if it's a dirty hit, whatever, you should be out as long as that player is out.
Yep.
Because that one was gross. That one was. I saw the I guess you call it a low light. I saw the replay of that, not too long after it had happened, and that one was. I don't know. There was just no excuse for that guy, for that D lineman. 300, probably pushing 300 plus. To hit 180-pound Devonta Smith, where there's 2 guys already on him.
Yeah.
Obvious that he was. The ref was just about to blow the whistle. His forward progress had stopped, and the guy just came in and just clocked him.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we see maybe a fine come down.
Yeah,
for that, but-
it's unfortunate that we can't have, like I said, and you're right, I have been talking about it. If they deem that it was an intentional leading with the helmet, etc., and you put a guy out,
defenseless receiver.
put a guy out of a game, you should have to leave, or if he misses the next game, you're out the next game.
And you miss your game check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll stop some of the senseless, and it was interesting because I watched as Damar Hamlin did it last night in the game. Lowered the head, got a penalty, and I sat there and I thought, the last, and I get it. It's split second, but the last guy I would have figured would do something like that.
Yeah, you'd think he'd be the one playing it safe,
Right.
for sure.
Right. So
Yeah.
next up, we've got Britton Covey out for multiple months, shoulder injury.
No clue who that is.
He is a
Never
wide
heard that
receiver.
Okay.
He plays for
I don't.
Yeah, I don't remember. I was looking through it. I should have written down who he plays for. He's a backup, and but he'll be out for. I believe he actually fractured a bone in the shoulder, so he'll be out for months.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Van Jefferson. Got poked in the eye. Unknown how long he'll be out. Not like he was.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
like he was
I know
seeing
who
much.
that is, but
Not
yeah.
like he was seeing much playing time. Ba-dum-bum.
Wow.
Next, we've got Sam Laporta, ankle, day to day.
Yeah, he got carted into the locker room, and then he came back in the game like twice or something like that, and it was bugging him. And so, with the ankles, it's always how bad did it swell over the last day?
Yeah.
And what's
Oh,
the
yeah,
pain
yeah.
tolerance?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I mean, having sprained ankles several times, it's not the. I don't even think it's the pain so much as can you push off. I've found, with ankle injuries, I've found that, I can deal with pain, but when you go to push off and there's nothing there, you become semi worthless in what you're trying to do.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Trey McBride, concussion protocol.
Yeah, that one was, I think as he was kind of coming down, had just caught a pass. The guy came in and clocked him, but that one to me didn't look intentional. It was just, unfortunate.
Well, and that's another thing. I mean, you see these running backs who tend to lower their head, and the guy is already making the move to tackle you. And maybe, it started out, he's going to hit you with the shoulder in the chest, and you duck down, and you catch his helmet on your helmet.
That's why
And supposedly there is a rule that if the top of the helmet, the crown of the helmet contact is initiated by the runner, then it can be an offensive penalty.
Yeah.
And there are times, and I don't think, and I've seen it a few times where a guy will do that, and I don't think a flag has been thrown. But I'm surprised that, it's not called more often, or they don't take that. And I get it, it's a bang bang play.
Yeah, that's why I don't have, maybe a little controversial, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy when quarterbacks slide super late.
Right.
And they get cleaned. I mean, there's been some really bad ones, over the years where the quarterbacks slide and the guy just comes in out of nowhere,
But if they're already in the air,
exactly, or
going
the
to make the, and all of a sudden, boom, they slide.
Already in,
right.
They're coming in. And a lot of times, if it's a DB, because that seems to happen a lot, they're going for below the knees. That's how they tackle a lot of the DBs.
Right.
So, you see they're already going down and then you're going to slide. I don't feel bad if you get,
how do you
take a lick.
Right,
there,
and how does the DB get out of the way?
But
you're in the air.
He's going to get flagged.
Right.
That's the problem. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Yes, it would almost, they review some of that stuff without it being a review, a challenge. They review some of that stuff, and I wish that they would review some of that stuff and say, he was already off his feet in the air, and then the slide starts, and there's no way he could have stopped himself, therefore we're picking up the flag.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Next up, we've got Skylar Thompson out for week 4+ with a rib issue.
Tim Boyle?
Yeah,
right?
Or Ty Huntley?
Well,
didn't they sign Huntley?
They did, yes. So maybe we see him. I don't know.
I read one thing that said Ty Huntley is going to be the quarterback.
Okay.
I'm not sure it matters right now.
It really does either. They're just.
You're going to find out from our number one dud. There
should be 2 other ones in there.
Right. Miami's pretty much, I think, cooked at this time for a while.
Yep. Yeah, I think they're going to struggle to potentially even make playoffs this year. So.
Right. Next up, we've got Austin Eckler, probably out for week 4 with a concussion, and I say that as I read something because it was a Monday night game is different than a Thursday or a Sunday when they've got the full week to progress.
Yep.
He's got 6 days to progress, and it's going to be difficult to make it all the way back.
I heard too, again, listening to another fantasy podcast, I'm learning here. I'm trying to perfect my craft.
Gotcha.
It's homework at that point.
Homework.
So, but they said it sounded like he didn't fly back with the team. So, sounds like it could be a pretty, maybe not super serious, not to a level serious concussion, but it does sound initially like he'll probably miss at least a week.
Right.
And I don't think, obviously 2 years ago and then last year, the NFL was really, seemed like they really cracked down on the concussions where if you got one, it didn't really matter.
You were out a
if
week.
It was minor or not, you were out 1 week. And
right.
It seems like they've kind of dialed back on that a little bit because I haven't heard of anybody, there's been a couple of concussions and they've been out there the next week.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We'll
other
see,
than Tua.
Well, of course.
Right.
So it sounds like
he was also having a good
he was having a
game.
really good game. Yeah, he looked. I mean, there was a little bit of the old Austin Eckler of
Well, and
5 years ago.
He had I believe they have him running kicks back.
They do,
and he ran a kickback like 66 yards.
Yeah, he had a long one last week that they called back because there was a penalty. But yeah, he's looked very good so far this year.
Next up, we've got the Pittsburgh running backfield. Jalen Warren, unknown knee injury, unknown how long he's going to be out. Was scheduled to have an MRI. Haven't heard the outcome of that. Najee Harris, a shoulder injury, unknown.
Yeah, he was in a sling apparently after the game.
Right.
But now I think today there was an update as I was kind of looking through, starting to look for maybe some trade targets and stuff in some leagues. And, the team I was looking at had Najee, and Tomlin says it sounds like he should be all good to go. It's just kind of precautionary.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yep.
I'm a Najee Harris manager
Yep.
in one of my leagues. I would love to see Jalen Warren out for a couple weeks.
Yeah. Well,
I don't like seeing anyone get injured. I'm just saying I'd like to see my running back get the touches.
And Najee's, his production comes from volume. So,
right.
He's not super efficient, but if he gets 15 to 20 touches, you'll have a nice week.
Right.
So,
next up, we've got Tank Dell, who had a hand injury or issue, and it's unknown how long he might potentially be out.
Yeah, I haven't heard much.
Something to worry about, obviously, with a receiver when the hand is involved.
And Houston, CJ Stroud was not good against Minnesota. Minnesota's defense is pretty legit. So
They must be.
yeah, but yeah.
And their offense seems legit.
He had a decent fantasy game. If you had him in your flex, you weren't like, oh, holy, great game, but it wasn't, he didn't kill you this week yet.
Yeah.
He's still, like PPR, I think he still ended up having like 11 or 12 points. So,
Yeah, not bad.
yeah, so
Not-
it'll just
not great.
Boost Diggs if he does miss. And
Right.
Nico's going to be Nico, so it doesn't really matter. But
Right. I'm just hoping it makes their tight end more valuable.
Schultz, yeah.
Yeah, because he hasn't done anything yet.
Any tight end?
Yeah. I mean, one of your top tight ends of the week was Strange last night.
Yeah. That wasn't a statement. That was his.
Yeah, his name is Strange,
Yes.
and that was one of the. He was actually seeing a bunch of targets, and
Yeah, he came in last week because Ingram was out
Right.
last week too, and he was one of the top tight ends.
right.
I think he might have been the top tight end on the week last
Yeah,
week.
I mean it's just
So
it's bizarre.
I caught a little clip from I think NFL Network or ESPN or something, and it was Michael Fabiano,
Yeah.
or whatever. He was talking about it might be time to just get rid of the tight end position and add another flex in your league because these guys are killing you. I mean, they're most of them.
Yeah.
Like I said, I deserved to lose to Nick in our Yahoo league because I had Mark Andrews.
And the funny
Who had one target with like a minute left to go in that game when they almost lost. And then I left our number one stud this week, Juwan Jennings, on my bench.
Yeah.
So I deserve to lose, but again, these top tight ends are killing teams now.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I was reading on one of the Facebook fantasy groups where someone said, you know what, I'll start Andrews this week, and he'll go off for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. You're welcome, everyone.
yeah. Yep.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
It seems like every once in a while you'll get a position or some players that, the expectations are high and they aren't performing there. I mean, who are the top 2 running backs right now? Saquon Barkley and Aaron Jones, I believe.
Yeah. Sounds right.
I mean, it's amazing that, and where were they drafted?
Saquon high.
Fairly high.
Yeah. And Aaron Jones was probably 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, interesting. Moving on to our studs. We've got the aforementioned Juwan Jennings, plus 29.19. He caught 11 of 12 targets for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns.
all 3 of Brock Purdy's touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, he made Brock Purdy. Well, but look, I mean, although I thought Ayuk was going to have a decent game.
Well, Ayuk, I think he was my starter of the week this week.
Yeah.
10 targets. But just, again, still does, I honestly think, I mean, I don't know how much the league could step in and say something, but, I mean, it's hurting the quality of these teams and the content that the NFL's putting out now, because we're getting these guys like Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, these guys that hold out through all of preseason, or I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand it's preseason. You don't want your stars to get injured, and it sucks.
No, but they aren't even really practicing.
Exactly. And then they come in and they treat the first 4 or 5 weeks like it's preseason.
Right.
And now you've got a Bengals team that's 0-3 that, I'm kind of rambling, but, they're going into Carolina this week against Andy Dalton. I think Andy Dalton.
They could go 0-4. Yeah.
And then I think they play. I can't remember who else they play, but the Bengals could start like 0-6.
Wow.
It's like crazy, with that talent they have. Obviously, they lost Mixon, but Jamar Chase is aside from last night looked bad. Him and Burrow weren't on the same page.
Yeah.
You got Brandon Ayuk has looked not ready to play. So
yeah, that whole thing about people holding out, holding in, whatever it is. You've got a contract. Mm-hmm. I get that you're not being paid the way you want to be paid. You're still making way more than anybody else in the world. And you're playing a game. And you sign, it's part of what the NFL and the Players Association agreed on. Mm-hmm. You need to honor the contract. Or don't sign it to begin with and go find another job, another career. Because you come in there and you think, oh, well, now I've made something of myself. I deserve this. I'm going to hold out. You've still got 2 years left on a contract or a year left on the contract.
I understand if you're Justin Jefferson, you're the number one receiver in the league.
3 years in a row.
Exactly. And, and you were that way as a sophomore in the NFL. Year 2. You're the best receiver in the league. That I understand because you're like, well, hold on. On my rookie deal, that's what? Potentially 4 more years on a rookie deal, right?
5 years. If you're drafted in the first.
Year 2.
Yep.
So in year 2, you're looking. So 3 more seasons, right?
After year 2.
Yes.
If you're a first round pick. Yes.
Exactly. That you could be on a rookie contract.
Year five is a massive jump up to for a wide receiver, it's still like 15 to 20 million.
I know, but like I'm saying, you get these top guys. What I'm saying is, who does Brandon Ayuk think he is?
Brandon Ayuk had some pretty good numbers.
A couple games here and there.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think he's always been kind of mid. He hasn't been, I truly think they should have let him, they should have.
Well, they had trade partners.
Yeah, I think they should have made the trade. You send him to Cleveland and get Amari Cooper back. Cooper's
I don't think they were going to do that, were they?
I think that was on the table.
Oh.
So
I think they really wanted George Pickens from Pittsburgh.
And I think that would have been crazy. Him, Debo, and, obviously CMC's in Germany getting his Achilles looked at. But
is that where he is?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Germany. There's some top-of-the-world specialist there. But,
wow.
Yeah.
So Germany is the top of the world?
Yep.
Wow. I never knew that.
At least they thought so in 1942.
41, 42, yeah. Then we have next.
So we didn't. Sorry, I rambled. We didn't talk about Jennings. He looked really good.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like Ayuk had 10 targets, which is awesome, great, but it didn't really amount to a whole lot. Jennings looked so much better than Ayuk did in that game. That I think if Jennings comes out and puts up another big game or a decent game, and you get, Kittle could be back this week. In the next couple of weeks, you get Debo back. If Jennings keeps playing this well, I think Ayuk could find himself as the 4th option on that offense. I really do. He just has not looked very good.
For $30 million a year?
Yeah.
They might be looking for a trade.
Yeah, I truly think they overpaid. I've never been a huge fan of his.
Yeah. Next we've got Kyron, plus 18.4. 2 catches on 2 targets, 27 yards and a touchdown. 24 rushes, 89 yards, and 2 more touchdowns.
I like that.
Interesting game because 2 players in the game had 3 touchdowns each.
Yep. Yeah. San Francisco, everybody thought it was going to be a squash match for San Fran, and ended up losing to, no Cooper Kupp, no Puka, That offensive line for the Rams is, held together with kids' Elmer glue. They're piecing that offensive line together, and LA came in and won.
Yeah.
And Kyron was the workhorse. I don't think Blake Corum had a touch at all.
Did not.
Ronnie Rivers had like 2 carries or something like that. That was it. So Kyron is, the guy, which makes me really excited because I've got him. So
Yeah, I had him in one of my leagues last year, and he sure was huge for me.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we've got Andy Dalton. He was plus 16.67. He was 26 of 37 passing, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 rushes, minus 2 yards, obviously both kneel downs.
Mm-hmm.
Second guy, didn't we say he was the second guy in the league?
Was he the second or technically the first? Who else would it have been? Who else was it?
It was, I don't remember.
But yeah.
So
He came in and
no, it was someone. I thought it was someone last week, a week ago, that threw for 303. Maybe not. I don't recall.
Yeah.
But we talked about this when we were talking about Bryce Young losing his job, and it completely changed Carolina.
Yeah.
A game that I thought, I thought it was a trap, and I didn't go with it in my, and it ended up we lost anyway. But I mean, you think about it, and you said, no, they're not going to win. And Andy Dalton plays like he did, and others played like they did, and Chuba, big game.
Yeah.
Thielen, a decent game, but he's now on IR with a hamstring issue. I didn't put him in there, did I?
Nope.
Should have been in there.
Deontay Johnson had a really, really good game too.
Yeah.
So, come in and, the week before you had Adam Thielen, yelling on the sideline, pissed off, frustrated. Everybody just,
Well, it's funny because I drafted Thielen in one of my leagues last year. I think it was in the 32-year league. And he started looking good after Bryce Young was injured.
Well, Thielen started out super hot
to
start the season. He was like the number 4 receiver through like 3 or 4 weeks.
But he had a good year.
Yeah.
And I think he's tired of a guy who can't throw the football. And that changed when Andy Dalton took over.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I saw a thing that said Andy Dalton played in the AFC North in the 2000s, so he's laughing at these defenses now. He had to play against Steelers and all those guys.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Derrick Henry, plus 15.9 points. He caught his only target for 23 yards, 25 rushes, 151 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Sounds like a Derrick Henry stat line.
Yeah. Beat him into submission and, get your 6 yards a carry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was ripping good runs pretty much every time you looked. Dallas is
in trouble.
Yeah, Jerry Jones, I think this season, he won't, but he needs to give up the GM. He just needs to be the owner. They need help bad there, because I think it was in the last decade or something I saw or heard a stat that the Cowboys defense, it's like the most rush yards given up in the first.
Can't be, because they're America's team.
Well,
I always hear that they're America's team.
Yeah.
And if they're America's team, everybody loves them.
Well, every year they say it's their year too.
Oh, that's kind of like the Bears winning the preseason every year.
Yeah.
Or off season or whatever it is.
So yeah, and that was that game. Obviously, again, as an Andrews manager, super frustrating because Andrews ran 4 routes in that game, and Lamar only threw the ball 15 times, and they almost lost. They were up 28-6 late in that game, and won 28-25. I wish they would have lost that game, the Ravens.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah,
I was kind of
just. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You can't.
I do want to bring one bright spot from the Dallas Cowboys, and that's Brandon Aubrey. Brandon Aubrey, a 65-yard field goal, and we talked about it in week 1. He was going to kick a 66-yarder. They called delay of game, I believe. And they had snapped it, and he kicked it, and it was good, and it was good easily.
Yep.
I was hoping that he was going to try the 73-yarder to see if he could make it. The guy, he is truly a game changer. In if you run kickers, a lot of leagues don't have kickers. Some don't have defenses. I get it. But as a kicker, if you've got to have a kicker, I picked him after I think the first 1 or 2 went.
Yeah.
And it was the Justin Tuckers. It was the Butkers.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going Brandon Aubrey. And Brandon Aubrey, he put up a measly, the 65-yarder is a 10-pointer for us.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Anything over 55, I think, is a 10-pointer. Or something like that. It's a ridiculous number. And he's put up 29, 14, and 19.
Yeah, for a kicker, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's interesting how you can have a position where, normally you're going to get 3, 4, 5 points every time they kick it, depending upon distance. But here's a guy with a superior leg and accuracy that he can win you games.
Yeah, it's like vintage Justin Tucker.
Yeah. Although Justin Tucker is missing these days.
Unless I said vintage. Probably one of my favorite kickers ever was Sebastian Janikowski.
Oh, yeah, Seabass. He could kick from a mile away, it seemed like.
That dude had a boot.
Yeah, although not compared to the kickers of these days.
Well, yes. But, yeah, that guy was crazy.
Yeah. Last one on our list is Saquon Barkley. Plus 15.29. He caught all 4 of his targets for a measly 7 yards. He had 17 rushes for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had one for 60 yards-ish?
Like that, yeah.
Which, obviously pads the stats quickly. That was the one that I believe put the game away.
Yep, iced it. Yeah, he's been the only consistent option so far on the Eagles. Devonta, I can't remember if Devonta had an okay week 1. But he had, he had a really good week last week because A.J. Brown was out. And then this week, I think he had another decent game with A.J. Brown out. But, Jalen Hurts has been so, borderline disappointing.
Oh, yeah.
For what, Hurts was still going in the 3rd, 4th round, in fantasy drafts behind Josh Allen. Even before, if you believed, if you had that faith in him.
And I waited till round 7 or 8, and I took Goff and Cousins.
Yeah.
I think back to back so that I had someone decent. Well, they're putting up better numbers, even though they aren't playing that great. They're putting up better numbers than he is.
Yeah,
and Hurts was, like you said, in our league, he was probably in the third round with 16 teams.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So yeah, Saquon, it looks good and looks, obviously getting out from underneath the Giants organization, has turned the clock back a little bit because he looks younger.
He does.
So
and
doesn't
I
have to physically carry an entire organization on his back. So.
I sat there and back when free agency started and the Packers went after Josh Jacobs, I really wanted them to go after Saquon. And Saquon signed for how little more? Like $1 million over 4 years or something. Yeah. And Josh Jacobs just doesn't look like a running back.
Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah. This past week, he was not good.
Yeah. Well, he had 32 carries the week before. And they really split the game. We'll see, because I think this week will be a little more, I know it's going into week 4, but a little more indicative of what it'll be in a tougher matchup. Minnesota, like I said, the Titans game was out of hand fairly quick. So Emmanuel Wilson
with the pick six.
Yep, Emmanuel Wilson had a good game.
A very good game.
Obviously, I don't think anybody anywhere started him, but had a good game because it was more of a split. Josh obviously didn't look that great to begin with, but it still was more split than I think it would have been if it had been a close game.
Maybe.
So,
moving on to our duds. Devon Achane, minus 16.51. 3 catches on 5 targets, 28 yards, 11 rushes for 30 yards. About 2.8, 2.9 yards per carry.
Yeah.
Not the Devon Achane that we're used to. But
No.
when you don't have a quarterback that can throw the ball, then they're going to load the box up and you're not going to be able to run.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Miami as a target if you do DSTs in your league.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think Carolina's off the table as long as Dalton. They were the team to target.
Exactly.
And then obviously people played the Raiders this week and, didn't work out too well.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Moving on, we've got Baker Mayfield, minus 12.76. 25 of 33, 163 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened there?
I don't know. It's, coming out hot first 3 weeks, and, he was looking really good, kind of, to me, parallel to New Orleans. New Orleans obviously was a little bit hotter with, them putting the whooping on Dallas, but, I don't know. Like you said at the top of the show here, it's just a weird week for a lot of games where you were like, oh, this should be no problem, or, they should win, and then all of a sudden you're like, what is going on?
Yeah. So, teams blowing out teams that it should have been a close game or even the other way.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just a weird week.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Anthony Richardson, minus 11.84. He was 10 of 20 passing for 167 yards, 2 interceptions. Looks like he ran it 8 times for 24 yards, which was only 3 yards a carry. Not a good game.
No.
He was hot early, was it only week 1? Yeah, week 1 he was on fire. Top quarterback.
Week 1 was, a long touchdown to Pierce, and I think he had another rushing touchdown in that game too. So, but Richardson looks bad. 50% completion, no touchdowns, even on the ground for him is not good. 8 rushes for a quarterback is a lot, but not for someone like him.
Well, right. Which, let's look at the opposite side, which is Malik Willis. Malik Willis comes in, throws for over 200 yards. Mm-hmm. I think he had like 4 or 5 incompletions, and he rushed 7 times for like 73 yards.
Yep.
More numbers that you'd expect out of Richardson.
Yeah, I think he's just. The thing with Richardson coming into the draft was that he's raw. He was still raw, and it was that the athleticism and the talent is there. It's just if you come into the spot that can develop that, because like I said, obviously his
it's there with Bryce Young too, right?
Yeah. Well, obviously his accuracy is a big problem because only completing 10 out of 20 targets.
Right.
He would on some of those 10 would throw a nice ball. And then the next one, I think he threw one to like 3, overthrew a guy bad into like 2 defenders,
mm-hmm.
And that was one of those picks. So just his accuracy, I think he's got such a arm on him that it's hard for him to control the touch a little bit too. So, they got to do some work with him.
You'd think that, you're going into the draft. I guess, that some of these GMs and head coaches and stuff get stars in their eyes and really can't see what they're looking at.
Yeah.
You should be able to say, this guy, the scouting that goes on, the scouts that teams have, and I get that you're going to miss on some, mm-hmm. but how often are we missing big on first-round draft choices. I mean, Puka Nacua should have been a first-round draft choice. In hindsight.
Yes, well, yeah.
And he goes in the 4th or 5th round. And that's a great draft pick. But when you get some of these quarterbacks that are out here, the Bryce Youngs,
that's the one I was going to bring up. You know, you had Bryce Young, which it sounds like they were at the time in strong consideration of taking C.J. Stroud, but the owner Tepper, who they need to somehow, like I said, force him out of there, overruled him and said, "No, you're taking Bryce Young." So, you know, because there were flags.
Well,
with
it's
Bryce
his
Young.
team,
exactly, and there were flags with Bryce Young, just like there are flags with Richardson.
Yeah,
you know, obviously, you know the whole draft thing. Obviously, Green Bay is really good at finding those players in the mid to late rounds that they can develop. You know,
right. Well, and that,
not like we've been great at, you know, early round.
Well,
picks
no,
and stuff,
but Jordan Love was a first-round draft pick.
Yeah,
but he wasn't forced into playing right away. And so many of these organizations go out and they take a first-round quarterback. And I get that, you know, you've made an investment, but the best thing that they can do is learn from another quarterback.
Yeah.
As opposed to tossing him in the first year and, you know, breaking them down.
Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago's
notorious for that too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and look at Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Looked pretty good this last week.
Let's see, he's 0-3. Oh, 3-0. 3-0. Yeah.
So.
And you know, my buddy Phil, we talked about it. We both thought they should have kept Fields, and I've said that on here.
Yeah, I was in the same camp.
Fields is, you know, did you get better? And maybe you got a little bit better at passing, but overall, I don't think they necessarily got a lot better. Time will tell. I mean, I'm not, you know, I just, it probably would have been a good idea to keep him as opposed to trading him for a 6th or 7th round pick and let him play and let Caleb Williams learn from him.
Yeah.
Wow. What a novel idea. Where have we seen that before?
Yeah,
no.
Then you gotta have the stones to deal with your fan base, you know, who are you know, really those, you know, the fan base is what pays your salary.
It does,
and it's for these players,
and it's way different when you are going from a Brett Favre to an Aaron Rodgers, and then you're going from an Aaron Rodgers to a Jordan Love. It's easier for us to say, you know, we've had, you know, I think they threw up a stat. We've had 11 quarterbacks start a game, or nine quarterbacks start a game in the last 32 years. Nine
insane. Different
quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And,
I think
you know,
the Browns had that in 1 year. A couple years
New
ago.
England was at like 14, so 5 down from us. And they had Tom Brady for 63 years.
It felt like it.
Isn't he older than I am?
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Mike Evans, minus 10.72. He was 2 catches on 3 targets for 17 yards, and he had did he have a rush? No, that was Jameson Williams. Yeah. 2 catches on 3 targets. Yeah. That's not how and Mike Evans, I mean, everyone talks, I had been reading, Mike Evans. I mean, generally, Mike Evans is great.
Yeah, I love Mike Evans. I mean, I got him last year, but last year he was like the pick of the draft, because I think I got him in like the 7th round, and he ended up he was like wide receiver 5, you know, at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Like he had a really, really good season. This one, I think it's tough because the first couple weeks here, Baker and Godwin have been really clicking, and I think Godwin still ended up having a decent game, regardless of Baker's, you know, obviously, you know, only 163 yards. But, you know, Mike.
Well, there was plenty left because only 17 went to Evans.
Exactly. Well, I'm sure probably another chunk of that still went to Rachaad White, even though he looks horrible.
Yeah.
So, but Mike Evans, you know, against Denver, correct? I believe.
Yeah.
I want to say it was against Denver. So that's, you know, Pat Surtain, who, you know, probably one of the top lockdown guys, and he's been clamping guys down for a while. But
I mean, And I mean, we've seen that, like we've said the last year and a half. Justin Jefferson goes up against Jair Alexander, and Jair beats him.
Yep.
And there's always someone's kryptonite, and maybe that's what happened. And I'm thinking that's probably what happened.
Yep.
I mean, it's not something that I'm worried about.
Yeah,
if I were an owner of his,
targets have gone down, and I think it's because they have a new OC who is, and obviously that's where Chris Godwin has been having a great year so far, is because he's actually playing in the slot,
right?
Primarily, and that's what he's good at, and that leaves Mike Evans. Mike Evans still, obviously only 17 yards, but you expect at least one of those to be a deep shot to him,
right.
Or if you get in the red zone, it's the back shoulder or over the shoulder fade, or the jump ball that he's so good at, that he's known for. So
right.
The two out of 3 for 17 yards is a little scary, but
yeah,
he'll be all right.
Next up, we've got Jameson Williams minus 10.52. He caught 1 of 3 targets for looks like 9 yards, and he had 1 rush for minus 7 yards.
Yuck.
I mean, Goff hasn't looked good.
No.
Detroit hasn't looked. I mean, they're 2-1, but they haven't looked that good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They are not the team that they were last year.
No, definitely not.
And I don't know, what has changed. I mean, you've still got Laporta, you've got Jahmyr Gibbs, you've got
Montgomery still.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's a little bit of, last year, we won the NFC North, and
so some complacency. I don't even think it's complacency. I think it's
a touch of that.
I think there's some. They got lucky last year. I mean, there was and I'm not saying that they're a lucky team. I'm saying that things went well for them. They ran a lot of fourth down tries, and it bit them in the playoffs. And people are, this whole thing about, the numbers and whether or not
analytics.
Whether or not the analytics say to go for it and not go for it. I mean, Detroit kind of made the analytics, and they were living off the analytics, and I don't think it necessarily. I think it's catching up a little bit, and they just, and they've had their share of injuries. I mean, it doesn't help when Laporta's injured. I just, I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't the NFC North champs.
I mean,
there are 3 good teams right now.
I was just going to say, the way it looks, it's going to be a pretty tightly contested race between, Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit. Right now, I wouldn't be surprised if it's any 3 of us, of between Green Bay and Minnesota, any of the 3, right now, the way the 3 teams are playing. I mean, like I said, Detroit not playing like they did last year, but they're still winning games.
Oh, yeah.
Minnesota's playing great. They look good. The defense looks really good. I mean, Green Bay, obviously,
winning 2 with Malik Willis.
Exactly. Getting it done, and, you get Jordan Love back, and, especially big matchup this week, coming up, with us and Minnesota.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think minus the Bears, the NFC North is the best division in football right now.
It very well could be, yeah. You look up and down most of the others, and there are some really bad teams.
Yep.
Or good teams that are really, really playing poorly. Yeah. I mean, you've got Dallas is 1-2. You've got Jacksonville at 0-3. You've got Cincinnati at 0-3. Yep. You've got Baltimore at 1-2. I mean, you look at some of those teams and you go, you've got San Fran at 1-2.
Yeah.
These are those are some of your best teams over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And now they account for pretty much a horrible, that winning percentage out of those 4 or 5 teams is horrible.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Moving on to our waiver wire. Obviously, Juwan Jennings. However, I'm going to preface this with who knows how long. He could be a 1 week wonder.
Yep. I hope not, because I got him in my flex.
I mean, let's. I mean, they're still without Debo.
Yes, the thing with Jennings this week is you don't want to miss. Obviously, he's not going to put up like in our Yahoo league. Once you hit 150 yards, you get a 1 point boost. So he had 47.5 points in our full PPR. You don't want to miss on, even if he scores half of that, this coming week. Like for me, it was between Jennings and Pollard this last week, and I went Pollard because I'm like, well, Jennings could have 12 points, and Pollard against Green Bay's defense, which had been a run funnel defense until they faced Tennessee. I'm like, Pollard could have 20 points. He could have a bunch of yardage and a touchdown, maybe 2 potentially. Who knows? And like I said, Jennings looked like the number 1 receiver for San Francisco this week. So,
right. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I wouldn't set my expectations too high.
Yeah.
If it's Fab that you've got, I wouldn't spend a whole ton on it because like I said, he may be a flash in the pan. He may be good for a couple of weeks, and then he may go back to being serviceable.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Calvin Austin III, kind of exploded a little bit.
Yeah, well, again, he's still in the Steelers, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Obviously, like we just said, Justin Fields had a really good game. For the 3-0 Steelers, they seem to keep doing it. Mike Tomlin, there's got to be some deal he made with somebody somewhere because he's had some horrible teams that he still somehow goes, over 500, winning seasons.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, grab a piece of that. Jalen Warren out. Pickens, I really haven't heard a whole lot of. Like hasn't been, lighting it up at all yet. So, yeah.
Next up, we've got Emmanuel Wilson. Like him? Don't like him?
He looks.
He got more than half the carry or half the touches,
and he looks. He's got some. He's got some juice.
Yeah.
I think was it week 1 that he came in too, and he looked the better back.
Yeah.
As well, same thing. Even on that horrible field they played on in week 1, still had some juice. So, and this is a guy that's been in the, with the team for a couple seasons now. So he knows the personnel, knows the playbook, has those, those relationships with everybody on the team. So, and no A.J. Dillon, no Marshawn Lloyd. So,
right.
He's the number 2 behind Jacobs.
Right,
so.
and if Jacobs isn't playing well or whatever, Emmanuel Wilson gets a lot of
we get
opportunities.
Love back and, get that offense functioning at that high level again. It really hasn't gone down a whole lot. But, you get that, hopefully elite from Jordan Love. And, if Jacobs isn't performing well and Wilson comes in, that's a pretty valuable piece to have on your bench.
Yep.
Potentially flex start if you need it, or bye-week filler too.
Next up, Trey Tucker.
Yeah, he had some preseason buzz. They were saying that this is, I think it was Pierce, the head coach, said, this is a guy that people aren't, won't think of, and I think he's going to end up having a really good year for us.
And he had a couple of good games last year, where he just exploded, and I'm guessing that Devontae Adams isn't necessarily the happiest player there yet.
Nope.
Because he doesn't see the targets, and Trey Tucker is, but I think Devontae is. He knows that his career isn't going on forever, and I think he's grateful to be out there.
Yeah,
I think he's more intelligent than most people out there that play the game. I think he knows that he's in a bad situation, and he's a team guy, and he doesn't sit there and make a lot of waves. The kind of guy that anybody would want to have on your team.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we were talking, I think you and I were watching the Vegas game last week, was it? And I said, oh my, nobody can make a catch like that.
Yeah,
and
that one on the sideline.
Yeah, and it didn't Right. Didn't put his hands out.
Yeah.
Didn't give the defender any idea that the ball was coming. Drops right into the hands. And my wife says, "What?" "No, Devontae Adams." I said, "It was Devontae."
Yeah. That was funny.
Because having watched him for all the years in Green Bay, I've never, and I've said this before, I've never seen a player that hides the fact that the ball is in the air,
Yep.
dropping. I mean, it's coming over the shoulder of the defender, and then all of a sudden he'll reach the hands and it drops in the basket.
Yep.
So, next up we've got Deontay Johnson.
If he's, if somebody got frustrated, I mean, he was a drop candidate last week in my mind. If I had him, I probably would have dropped him for Juwan Jennings,
Right.
Or
Well, yeah, you had to be.
Mooney comes to mind too.
Well, and I was going to add Darnell Mooney on this,
yeah.
and I'm sure that I'm not the only one, but I'm one of the few in our 16 team league.
Yep.
That was my last wide receiver I took. I
Yeah.
took him as my fourth wide receiver.
Yeah.
And I haven't played him yet, mainly because I've got Malik Neighbors and Justin Jefferson.
Yep.
And I've got DJ Moore.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to throw him in there,
Yep.
but he's put up decent numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he finally has, he's at, back to the old, he was with Chicago for 4 years and nothing seemed to work there.
Yeah,
they couldn't get their offense going.
Had some big game, some big pops, some games, some big catches, here and there. And,
Right.
But
now, you go to a team that actually brought in a good quarterback.
Yeah.
Who is, starting to look a lot better. I mean, he didn't look good week one.
No.
Cousins didn't.
Yeah.
But he has the last couple of weeks. And the last couple of weeks, he's been looking more to Mooney.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. So
Deontay Johnson.
Turn that into a Mooney.
Yeah, well, I mean, both of them.
Yes,
both of them are on there.
Yeah, Deontay, as long as Andy Dalton's still starting, because
Right.
Panthers have, the coaches organization said that they do expect Bryce to start again at some point this season.
Oh.
Yeah. So as long as Andy Dalton's in there, obviously, like we just said, Thielen on IR. So, that leaves some targets out and, are available for Deontay to scoop up. I mean, he had quite a few targets this week. So, and this was a guy who that was his bread and butter in Pittsburgh, he'd have 13 targets every week for, 70 yards, maybe a touchdown, but, you catch 10 out of those.
Yeah.
And for, 70 yards, that's 17 points. That's
in
a
PPR,
fantastic week for
Yep.
PPR. So, I either I think last week was the week, he was out on the waiver wire, people are probably going to be paying up, if you have fab and stuff like that. But, he would have been with Andy Dalton, the news came out, he would have been probably a buy low, like buy super low.
Right.
Just swapping bench players.
Right.
Yeah.
Last one we've got is Bucky Irving.
I like Bucky. He looks so much better as a runner of the football than Rachaad White. Rachaad White's always looked and been very inefficient on the ground, but Rachaad White catches a lot of passes and is a good receiving back. And Bucky's a little bit of the inverse, where he's a better runner. He still had some catches this week, but the eye test was, holy cow, this guy looks so much better than the starter.
Right.
And because I stashed Bucky on my bench in the Yahoo League 2 weeks ago, and that's where he's going to sit, because I think there's going to be a week where I think it's going to flip and he's going to take over.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it a week or
Yeah.
like last week that you thought that might be happening at some point in the
just getting
soon.
closer and closer, and so he's staying on my bench until it happens.
So I do want to bring back a little segment that we did last year, which was our loser of the week.
Oh yeah.
And so our loser of the week comes from my league that I started playing a couple years ago. And
It's not the reigning champion, is it?
Huh?
It's not the reigning champion from last year, was it?
Me?
No, the loser of the year.
Yeah. It's Karen again. She again played, I think it was one or two people that were out.
Nice.
And, I reached out to the commish and I said, gosh, starting already?
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you mean? This is a good friend of mine. What do you mean? I said, well, she did it again. She played a couple players that are out. And how do you not pay attention? And it was, I said at the beginning of the year when she came back, I said, so is she going to pay attention? Yeah, she said she's going to pay attention this year. And it just baffles me that you can, granted, it's a $25 buy-in. So for a lot of people, that's like, okay, so it's fun money. Pay attention to your team.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
And I told him that I was, that I use her in our loser of the week. And he said, that's mean. And I said, you know what? I said, it's a segment and we like doing it and we like pointing people out. I said, I don't use her name. So I'm using her name. And I think I probably used her name last year. But no one knows who she is. No one knows where she's from.
A lot of Karens out there.
Yeah, there are more Karens than you'd believe.
True name Karen and Karens.
Yeah, so that's all we've got for this week. Hope you either listen to us or watch us on YouTube.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm Ozzy.
I'm Austin.
Have a great week.